Hi, everybody. Good to see you guys. This is Joanne with Fur Better, Fur Worse Dog Training.
And Lisa Bataska with Canine Defined.
So let us know that you are out there. Um, Tonight, we wanted to talk about when you should seek professional help for your dog. You might need to seek it for yourself, but that's not what this one's about. We're not skilled in that. Um, so I think most all of us have been at a point, including Lisa and I, in our dog owning careers, um, of things that are happening, and maybe we know that they're happening. We are trying our best to fix them. We're doing all the things that get recommended to us, and maybe it does get better, and then it gets worse, or it doesn't get better at all. So we kind of wanted to touch on a couple of topics tonight that I think are fairly common topics that we like. When do you know when to stop trying and seek out a professional opinion to get that, that second opinion to help you out? So I don't know. And I will tell you, even as a professional trainer, sometimes we do the same thing. I remember seeking out Lisa for an issue with a dog that I was having that I couldn't figure out by myself. So made me feel better when she couldn't figure it out either. But
Right.
yeah.
So sometimes, yeah, and you're so right. Like some people, like they notice stuff. It was interesting. So today I had a lesson I went to, and I was just watching, we watch the dog to see what the dog's, tells us about who they are. Um, and it was interesting because I feel like she said he was always afraid of like going across a specific floor. So he would only go with on the rugs, and then she would have to help him across that floor. And and she didn't know how to do it. And that kind of came up, and I'm like, well, you want to check and see if there's something else going on we don't know. And then once we understand that, then you can kind of fully address some of the issues, right? But she called me in for reactivity at the doorway. So, and so we saw all these different pieces. And that's when she was like, I can't get this to change. So she finally reached out. It took her a little bit, right? But she did, which means that now you have a history of trying to like work on those pieces, right? Separate without actually creating the conflict or the reactivity and stuff. But, she had felt she had gone so far and she reached out. And that's one of the minor ones, right? I mean, that wasn't a big bitey or problematic issue, but we all reach our limits and we're like, I need my help. So
Yeah, and just so you know too, sometimes there's not necessarily an answer other than management. And I think that's where sometimes we as trainers feel a little bummed. but
right.
but sometimes that really is the answer. Like, I don't want to give up on a dog, and I don't know what else to do, and we've tried all the things, and sometimes you just have to manage it. I have two, most people who know me, I have two boys that don't get along, and it's not about anything. They just do not like each other, right? It's like I say, it's like Republicans and Democrats. I don't want to hear what you have to say. I'm not interested in what you want. I just don't like you. So there's nothing that I can do about that. I can't, just like I can't make two people like each other. I can't make two dogs like each other.
Right.
So I have to choose management to keep everybody safe, because I love them both and I don't want to give up on either one of them. So I think our very first one to kind of talk about is resource guarding, right? So I think we've all seen it. If you've had more than one or two dogs, you've probably seen it in varying forms, whether that's your puppy's testing the waters, with its first bone, and he growls when you come near him, or you actually have a case where the dog's willing to charge and bite. So like, where is that on the scale of importance and severity? So I know I have one in the house right now. I don't know about you, Lisa.
Yes, the new guy, Ozzy, just came in. He does do some, but he's not serious. And I think because I've been watching this, because when it's our own, you're like, oh man, I don't want to deal with that. So I noticed it when he was like had a toy, and I walked up to him, and he's like, in the big huge whites of the eyes, looking up at me, don't you dare take this from me.
Yeah.
And so, and I think it was a rehearsed behavior, because then I didn't react to that, and I was like, okay, I see you. And then I think he was like, his next sequence was to growl. And so that backed my husband off. I'm like, you've rehearsed this before, right? And I'm like, that's not okay. So he does it, but it doesn't seem super serious. It seems more learned. Plus he's a teenager. So, there you go. But you have, it's Roscoe, right?
Sure is. Sure is. And I think too, some dogs can have more tendencies towards resource guarding, just based on their temperament, right? Some dogs can have it. I think persistence to food, which we can see at 8 weeks old when we assess dogs, can be a big precursor to it. But I think you're also teetering on that teeter-totter, and depending on how humans manage the situation or deal with that situation, you can make it worse or you can reduce it. And I didn't get Roscoe till he was a year old. Mm-hmm. And I know for a fact they corrected and took and did all the things, because he is a forager. From the day I kind of brought him home and he got comfortable, he loves the recycle bin and he loves cardboard. So like that was his big thing. He'd want cardboard. He takes it to his bed and he shreds it up into little pieces. He doesn't eat it, and it's a favorite pastime. So for me, I'm like, I don't need to mess with that. I'll just get it when you're done. But I think this is where, when we get dogs that are not puppies and we don't have the history on them, if you get a dog as a rescue, or you get a dog later in life, and someone who has had them, who has created really negative experiences and stole things and corrected growls, and even sometimes gets nasty with the dog for growling or doing whatever with their resource, in the brain, those neural pathways get built, burned in. It's like a tattoo, right? And we can always cover over it with good training, but it's always there. So I have done a ton. I can take 99% of anything away from him now. And so I thought, this is even with me, right? I thought we were sort of like kind of out of the woods. And a couple months ago, I had given them raw bones, and they were all in their individual areas chewing their bones. And I got up to go to the bathroom or something. And as I walked by him, he just turned feral, just charged at me from the couch. He never actually got off the couch, but he charged at me, baring his teeth. And I just kind of looked at him like, no, we're not doing that. And I mean, he meant it. Like, I have no doubt he would have bit me. So unlike Lisa's dog, who's testing, nope, he has had enough rehearsal of, and that was the final straw of getting rid of him. One of the kids tried to take away a pen he was chewing on, and he nipped him. So I have no doubt he'd put teeth.
Is he part rot too, Roddy?
Very little. He's a Labrador, and then Border Collie, Aussie, Cattle Dog, and Pit. Oh. And then he's a bunch of other little things. Right. So, but I think because, even with the trust and the bond that we've built, it was like that switch got flipped, where he couldn't help it. He didn't even know that he was doing it. And I sat down next to him and I was like, listen, I'm not going to take your stuff, but you can't do that to me. And he was like, big whale eye. And then all of a sudden he kind of softened it as I was sitting there, realizing, I don't actually want your bone. I gave it to you. You can have it. And then he was fine and I could actually pet him. But it was like that split second, right? Drew the gun in the dark alley.
Yep.
So I do have a couple of videos just to kind of show you some more mild stuff versus some more severe stuff. So I'm going to show you a picture of Roscoe in his milder state, so you can kind of see what that looks like. Let me just pull this up first.
So how long have you had him now? You've had him for how long now? Has it
2
been?
years. 2 years in because I adopted him in May. So, yep. Doesn't seem like that long, but it sure is. So,
Wow.
let's see.
I remember there was a foster that we. Oh, you got it. There it is.
That's okay. So I'm gonna just show you the piece that matters. So here I gave him this to take away by himself. So he goes off by himself. And he kind of checked back like, is this really for me? I'm like, yep. So I let him get into it a little bit. This is just some like generic-y, crappy something I wouldn't give to my dogs normally. I think it was like a busy bone or something gross like that. So you can already see.
Yep.
Looking over his shoulder. Where are you? He pulls his paw over it. Freeze. And so he can read my body language like you weren't really serious. So I want you to see that again. He looks over his shoulder.
Yep.
Chewing. Paw goes over.
Mm-hmm. Hunker down.
It's not serious. Then when I go in closer, see the little, he pops his head at me. Freeze. Back to it, right? So we've built some trust there. So he knows, he trusts that I'm not going to take it, but not 100%. Okay. Just one more time. There goes the paw. Freeze. Head pop. Freeze again. You see that stillness in the dog?
And he was like, he hung on to that even when you patted him. He was like, I don't know about this.
I know this game, right? I know exactly what this game is, and you're going to take it. So that's a little more mild case, but there's still very much potential there, right? Mm-hmm. And then I will show you a little bit more of a serious case. Let me see if I can get to this. Go back here. I'm going to show you a little bit more serious one. This was a dog in a shelter. And as soon as we saw this, I was like, yikes. So nice little Labrador mix. Got his tennis ball. Gonna start chewing the fuzz off.
Nope.
All right, so I'm gonna show you that again.
I'm like, please stop.
Yeah, I wish I could slow it down for you guys.
Please stop moving.
Yep. So this happens really in pretty quick motion. Freeze, tooth, right? The dog immediately goes to baring teeth. And he means it. You can see that still. Hold your breath, and he's baring teeth.
Yeah. So
that one to me, 100%. He would have nailed her right in the hand. Okay, where you could see Roscoe was he was still frozen, but that little, that little head flick, he's like, I'll muzzle punch you. Like, right? He was gonna let me know. That dog wasn't gonna let you know any more than he did with his teeth. He's like, this is what I will use.
Well, I always find it, I guess it's more like when they think about it, doing something, I'm like, oh, okay, we have some work to, we might be able to affect some change here. But when they are so hard and fast on those, I'm like, I don't know about that. So,
yep. I don't remember if that dog made it out of the shelter, but I'm guessing not. So, and that's the unfortunate world. So if that wasn't a shelter dog and that was somebody's house,
or a child,
that dog, if you saw that, which is like that split second, you don't really get any warning. Here's my teeth and I'm going to use them.
Yep. That's
a moment that you either put that dog away whenever it has anything of value, or that would be a moment to call in the reinforcements. And here's the thing about resource guarding, and I know Lisa and I have had this conversation so many times. Don't wait till the dog's 4 and has bit someone.
No.
Because the longer they practice that behavior, the more hardwired it is.
Well, and the other thing, you've seen some stuff on like the very social media. when people will like taunt the dog, and usually it's little dogs, right? Or they
Mm-hmm.
want the big, huge display, but it takes a little while, and that's the thing. I mean, I joke around with stuff, but I usually more, I'm gonna go get you, right? Whereas if I'm coming in to take the thing, I'm like, buddy, can I have it? If it's something I can hold, and he's gotten better now. He's actually retrieving things to me, which is way awesome. So, but sometimes people will taunt the little dogs, and we don't think that they can cause that much damage, but yeah, they can,
Mm.
right? So, but it's way better to address it when you first see it. But I think sometimes people don't recognize the signs of it, right?
Agreed.
Uh,
Agreed.
I have a toy and I'm hovering and I'm looking so cute at you. And this is when you see some of those pictures, right? Where it's here, not from here. Because this, if the dog's looking up at you, it's more threatening versus here. Oh, look at the cute puppy dog eyes. I'm like, no, no, no. Could be resource guarding, right? Just, it's
Yeah.
kind of crazy. But anyway.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the big ones that I see, and unfortunately, people wait way too long, and it gets harder to fix with every encounter.
Yeah.
If the dog's already has been willing to bite you, it's a long time coming, right? It's hard to reverse that. And if you have kids, particularly small ones, that's where it just gets scary, because you could tell a kid 100 times over, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that.
Right.
They're gonna do what they do, right? Don't eat that cupcake when I walk out of the room.
Right.
I need to eat that cupcake. So
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good one for sure. And it's really cool when people start recognizing stuff. And what's even better is that the dogs are more forgiving than most, and they bounce back from it and they're like, "Oh, okay, I can do that." But it is harder to fix the older they are, harder to work with. I mean, I think I had the dog that I had fostered for 6 months. That's why, some of the fostering's difficult, right? And when you know it, can recognize stuff and help dogs, then you get the hard ones all the time. So anyway, he would resource guard everything from water bowl in a group of dogs against people and dogs, and he was willing to put holes in you. I never pushed him that far, but I recognized it and stuff like that. And so he was fine with me, but he was over a year old when this stuff was exhibited, and it was pretty serious. And he was able to acclimate to me in my home, but it's very difficult to take that and transfer it, right? Because there's a certain level of trust with that and understanding between the two individuals, right? And so, he's got 50% chance of, this person knows what they're doing, etc. So interesting.
yeah, and I mean, to me, if you are already at a point where your dog finds something that they want, and again, it can be something ridiculous. Like one of my people that I see all the time, it was like grass clippings when they went on a walk, right? And so it's like the weirdest thing. Like, why is that important to the dog? That's what resource guarding is whatever resource I find covetable, right? Whatever resource that I want to protect because it's important to me. And I think sometimes that's where we can say it comes out of the blue, or you might not think it's resource guarding. You might think it's just dog aggression. But if you're to the point where you're having to like grab a collar, hang the dog, try and dig something out of its mouth, that's the point, right? If you have not been bitten yet, seek help. Seek help. Because it's not going well for you if you're having to use physical force to try and restrain the dog. And I think you're going to hear us talk about this a couple times tonight. Don't put your hands in their mouth when they're not in a state of happy behavior.
Right.
Right? Happy, calm, nice dog stuff. Just don't do it. It's not worth it. It's not worth your fingers or your hands.
Yep. Damage.
So.
Yeah. Yep.
Anything to add? Anything else that you would say with like when or subtle signs that you might see to catch?
I mean, I guess, there's so much in a professional. I think I'd clarify as far as there's behavior, but there's also the vet, right? When to consult the vet too. Like, I think that's the other thing that just came to my mind, was like how people think there's behavioral issues when it turns out it's a physical issue, right?
Yeah.
And so if you were to come to any one of us, right, we would say, definitely need to get everything checked out health-wise to make sure nothing else is going on. So, and then also to have them checked for pain, which is, that's the whole other thing, right? Because behavior is exacerbated by these conditions that are out of homeostasis, right? So, for the dogs that, getting gaiting videos, moving videos and stuff like that. There was one client that I'd gone to and they had a little puppy and she was a little tentative. And it was a chondroplastic dog, it had the, like a corgi front where their legs are short and kind of out. Well, anyway, she goes, I want you to see something. And I said, sure. And so she sent the dog up. She goes, go upstairs, call her. So she called her. But instead of going straight up the stairs, she went like this at a diagonal every single time. And she goes, I've noticed she's done that. And then she was standing there. I really took a look at her front legs because she was tentative. So I couldn't see all of her at that time. And then it turned out, her one leg was messed up. So she's using the other leg. So her stronger leg is driving her path, right? So it was very interesting. And I haven't heard anything since. I'm like, okay, very, yay, I'm glad you figured it out if that's the case. So, but
I was just going to say, so things like that, right? If you have a dog, and not saying it can't be just plain old resource guarding, but if you have a dog that's guarding the couch when someone comes near to sit next to the dog, or the bed, if you get stuff, in the middle of the night where you bump the dog and the dog goes nuts, right? Those are all really 50-50 cases.
Right.
Of, is it really resource guarding or did you disturb the dog? And I had a Doberman who was the sweetest dog in the whole wide world. Like, didn't have any teeth hardly in her mouth, thank goodness. But got to the point when she got old enough, if I bumped her in the middle of the night, she would wake up snapping. And she nailed me in the leg one night. And man, even a gummy dog, that hurt like crazy. And I later found out, right, her spinal degeneration had gotten so bad. She was getting like these nerve zings, right? That just, if you just bumped her, it was like, stabbing pain and waking up to stabbing pain out of a deep sleep. I didn't blame her for waking up snapping. So managed that situation, right? We got her own little orthopedic bed, and you can't sleep in bed anymore because it could have been a dog and that could have been a dog fight. Right. So, yep. So speaking of, nice.
Yes, I was just going to say that.
I didn't mean to do that.
It turned out.
Yeah, I want to talk about dog fighting. And I think this one's a rough one because it's hard as an owner, especially when you haven't seen many, to see your own dogs get into an altercation, right?
Yeah.
Actually, hold on. Before we move to that, Lauren has a question. What's the earliest you would see resource guarding in a puppy? And does feeding in puppies from one source altogether create resource guarding behavior? I would say you could probably see it as early as 3 to 4 weeks, really, truly. But
if you're rearing the litter, I've seen it when the puppies have come to me the first time I saw it, and it was very serious. And it turned out the dog ended up having to be euthanized because he was biting people and punctures and blood, bad. So anyway, he was 8 weeks old when I first met him, and I saw that.
Yep, I once saw an 11-week-old puppy, among other things. Yes, sent the lady to the hospital twice. 11-week-old puppy.
Out of curiosity, was it a larger breed?
American Eskimo. It was a tiny little puppy.
Oh,
it meant it when it was bite. Yeah, it was bad. Her hand was like all bandaged up when I went to see her. So, does feeding young puppies from one source altogether create resource guarding behavior? I don't think so. In general, right?
Yes.
I think if you have a really large litter and you are not making sure that each of those puppies are, getting, usually experienced breeders that have large litters, I would say even bigger than 5 or 6, right? There's 2 bulls, sometimes 3 or 4. So you really want to make sure that each puppy has its own kind of space to make sure they're eating and that they're getting an appropriate amount. So I would never recommend putting down the bowls and walking away from a litter of puppies.
Right.
That should be managed. Yeah, if the litter's pushing out one of them, I don't know that there's any real study to say that it creates it, but
No.
I don't know there's anything.
I think, the best, sorry, my allergies, the best thing to do with litters is just have multiple sources of food, right? So they can go from one to another, whatever. So, and that's just guarding against potential for it. But I think if you have dogs that naturally are guardian dogs, right? Say, the Dobermans and so forth, the guardian types of breeds, they're all going to have a little bit of something, right? Because they're genetically selected for that. So, it's stuff to consider. But I've not heard it being creating resource guarding type of behavior. I mean, maybe if the pups weren't fed properly, right, or given enough.
Yeah, I think for me, and again, just dealing with a lot of dogs over time, I'm not saying that it can't come, because I know they can just be wired wrong, right? And it can get pretty severe through no real reason other than there's just something genetically wrong with them. But what I normally see is you have some mild tendencies towards it, and it's nurtured by the humans into something bad, and then it gets much, much worse. So usually when I see bad cases, it was either bad from the moment they were a puppy, or humans have made it 10 times worse.
Well, I think people get a lot of bad info, right?
Yeah.
They get a lot of, like, pull the puppy away, touch it when it's eating, take away the bowl, stuff like that.
Your hand in its bowl when it's eating. Yes. Make sure that it's like, no, food's for you.
Yeah.
So, and I'm just going to debunk this right now, because actually somebody from the shelter called me and was like, would you recommend hand feeding a dog to help with resource guarding? And I'm like, not if it's not my dog and I don't know it.
Right.
Because somebody did that with a foster and ended up getting nailed in the arm like 4 times. I'm like, nope.
Yeah.
So you can use that to help, kind of sharing and get the dog more comfortable with it. But I would not do that with a dog I didn't know. So, All right. So on to the dog fights. This subject, I think, is kind of near and dear to me, probably Lisa too, because I don't really have them anymore. I would if I didn't have a separated house. I got X-pens and gates and stuff everywhere, and I manage that situation really well, but I know how to do it now. Back when I fostered a whole bunch of dogs for Doberman rescue, I had fights all the time. Not all the time, but I mean frequent enough that I was comfortable with a dog fight. And so I think, first of all, the thing that sucks is what is it? Is it a verbal altercation or is it a fight?
Right.
So I think you've heard us talk about this before. Verbal altercations is exactly what it sounds like. It's a loud bar fight. Everybody's yelling at each other. Somebody might throw a punch or two, but like nobody's got a shiv. Nobody pulled out their knife, right? There's not going to be a murder tonight. And I think because of the gnashing teeth and the dogs running around and bumping into each other and sometimes grabbing hold of each other, it sounds way worse than what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So you never want a dog to get injured or hurt. But far more often, what usually happens is we create tears and lacerations, pulling dogs apart that are gnashing teeth, or even worse, you get bit yourself.
Right.
Which happens frequently when you reach in to try and break up a dog fight.
Yeah. Stay away from the bitey end.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I know, like, yes. And I've done it and I've managed, but that's why, like, now when I look at dogs, I'm like, there's certain criteria I need from you if you're going to join my home. Right. So everybody's a little different and we all have quirkiness or whatever. But one of the things is, you can't hurt other dogs. Sorry. And so then how, selecting for that appropriately. But yeah, I agree with you. I think the scariest thing about dog fights is, one, seeing them and realizing how helpless you are. when that happens because you're alone most of the time, depending, whatever. But even if you're like somewhere else, I remember I was at an event and there were two large dogs, two large giant breed dogs, and one went after another. And then there were people there. Everybody's got the dogs on the leashes and they're pulling. And I'm like, stop. Still the head, right? There's plenty of us here, still the head, and so forth. And it was released, but the other dog got hurt, punctures, not tears. But it could have been way worse. But yeah, people, we jump in and we panic and we think we're Superman, and sometimes that's not going to work. So,
most of the time, I think the dogs are focused on the other dog. But if you startle them coming from behind, most of the time they'll whip around, bite you, and then go back to what it is that they were doing. So it's just a rough place to be. And I think I was having this conversation with Rescue too, which was like, somebody got nipped breaking up a dog fight. Well, is that a dog bite? Yes.
Technically, yes.
But I'm like, if I was afraid of a boa constrictor and you threw one on me, and, I pushed Lisa into the wall and I, dislocated her shoulder, right? Did I mean to do that to Lisa? I had no intent there. All I was trying to do is get away from the thing that was frightening to me or scary. And, I might come back later and be like, oh my gosh, Lisa, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. Like, I would never do that to you, which is very different than like, get out of my way.
Right.
So I think when there's no intent, like bites or accidents sometimes. And I don't know, people can shun me for that, whatever. But I really do feel like if the dog has intent to bite you, like say resource guarding, right? I think they have they can hold it back or they can bite you. And, sometimes we provocate that, but at the same time, the dog still makes that choice, right? We're in a fight. If you surprise them, I don't think it's a conscious choice.
Right.
I don't know. How do you agree with that or no?
I think yes, they can be accidents or not non-intentional, but also then for me, then I'm like, okay, what about your temperament makes you like that? You know what I mean?
Yes.
So then I look back at the temperament and is that something that can be mitigated or worked with depending on where the dog lives, right? And their owner at that time too. So, but yeah, I think, because I'm thinking back, my people biter was Simon, and he would always go from behind, grab, and then release and run away. He wouldn't stand there and really grab. But Charlie, his arch enemy, they were not a good. They didn't like each other very well. Anyway, Charlie, he liked people, but he was nervous with dogs, and he wasn't horribly socially tolerant. And I'm not sure if that was due to a visual issue, but anyway. Regardless, yeah, if he's in a fight, he's redirecting on anyone and anything and anyone close to him because he was not a confident dog. So, I think, yeah, temperament does play into it, but do I think sometimes there's an oops? I think the oops wouldn't be so super deep.
Yes.
Does that make sense? So
yes.
the intensity of or how bad the injury shouldn't be as bad, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
But anyway.
I'm gonna vamp for a minute. I'm gonna see if I can find a picture. Because I think what Lisa's saying too, like if I have a dog that's gonna redirect and comes all the way up my arm or grabs my arm and shakes or those types of things, yeah, that's a different story than like I whipped my head around, nailed you, and went back to what I was doing.
Right.
And maybe I have a puncture, but it always hurts. Even without breaking skin, man, they do some soft tissue damage with teeth.
Yeah.
So I'm going to see this. I have this photo of a bite and it was apparently a bite breaking up a dog fight. And I saw it and I was like, oh my good Lord. So yeah. Go ahead.
And how old was the dog in this particular case?
Oh, it was an adult. I mean, 3 or 4 or 5, somewhere between that, middle-aged, right?
Right. Yeah, I think I know they send pictures and people say, "Oh, I got bit," and we want to see pictures, and then you see the dog to determine the intensity or who the individual was. Did you find it yet or no?
No, almost. Here it is. I'm going to share it this way instead of. So I'm going to tell you guys, like, this is gross. So full warning here. If you don't want to see this, look away, and I'll tell you when I put it away. All right, but here it comes. Okay, so.
Yep.
All right, picture away. So you can look again. So that is a severely
Yes.
bite, a laceration. It actually has fat and muscle coming out of that incision. That's not okay.
Was that what was that, a one bite? You said multiple bites, right? Or is
That
it
was
one
well, that was 2 bites. One to the hand, one to the leg.
So that was the one to the hand, right?
No, that was the leg. The hand was a full mouth puncture. Actually, I can show you the hand if you want.
I just think it's interesting. Like, did he?
All right, I'm gonna show you one more. So you guys look away if you don't want to see this. But this is the hand one from the same dog. Okay, go ahead. You can look back if you didn't want to see that. So
were those stitches on that hand?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Which normally they don't stitch a dog bite, so that kind of tells you how deep it was. Unfortunately, yeah, that dog's no longer with us. But that's a long-standing, because I said this is not the first time the dog has bitten a person or a dog. And well, no, it's never come out. Well, yes, it has. Well, yeah, it's been happening for a little while. Well, yeah, this is the 4th time the dog's bit us. And it progressively got worse, right? And they never asked for help. When the dogs first started fighting, when the dogs first got injured, when they first got injured, like
were they fosters or were they a family that owned the dog?
It was a puppy adoption. Okay. This was a real home later, right? So, and I think, temperament wise, this is sometimes rescues when they adopt out young puppies. They're not behavior people. So, they see a sweet puppy and they might miss a lot of things. And it's nobody's fault.
I don't know along those lines. I don't know of any shelters or rescues that I work with in my area that temperament test dogs or assess the dogs and see their behavior, who they are, and really keep track of that for placement, because it's a puppy, right? And a lot of people are still in the impression that a puppy's a clean slate when it's not.
Not at all.
So, yeah. But anyway, it was really sad.
It was very, very sad, right? But again, see, this is you see the theme now that we're talking about. When you don't ask for help and you continue down the same path, it never usually goes well. It never gets better. I'll tell you that. Like, unless you have some insight to change something, right? If your problem stays the same, that you need help, right? You need help to come find some interventional assistance to stop that, or at least make it less frequent. So, and especially if things start happening more frequently, don't wait. Don't wait.
I think too, a lot of times, and the other, like sometimes when we rescue or adopt a dog and stuff like that, the concern is that, just like it is in a volunteer situation in a shelter, people don't want to report things like that because it ruins their chance, right? And the unfortunate part is that those dogs are being set up to fail because they're going to rehearse a behavior if you don't know, or nobody knows that has an issue and maybe it can be worked on prior to, right? So it just depends. But yeah, it's kind of crazy. So.
Yeah. And I think dog fighting, for me, most of the time, is just dogs that don't really get along, or somebody's yelling at somebody. But again, even if there's no damage, when those fights start happening once in a great while, like I would say, if you have 3 a year between 2 dogs, okay. But if 3 turns into 4, or 4 turns into every other month, right now you're starting to have either dogs that are starting to not trust each other and not enjoy each other's company. You're starting to have pain creep in where a dog's trying to get another dog to stay away from it. And I think dog fights are so traumatic, even when there's no damage, right? It's so traumatic to the humans to see their two dogs gnashing teeth and barking and yelling at each other. It's sort of like being mugged, right? Like, well, what were they wearing? I don't know. I don't remember. How tall were they? They were this tall, and they weren't. They were this tall. So, it gets a little, you can get some PTSD from dog fights, right?
Yes.
Ask anyone who's ever owned a reactive dog.
Right.
As soon as the dog looks at another dog, they're like, oh, don't. So, imagine if you have fights happening. I think what's really, really important is to be objective. Okay. Which is, you may have an idea of who's starting it and what you think is happening, but that might not be true. I can't tell you how many times I've been, oh, this is the aggressor and he does this. And I'm like, that's not what's happening at all. Right. And I think sometimes when you have big dog, little dog fights, people always say big dog's the aggressor. And I will tell you 9 times out of 10, it's the little dog that's starting it. Right. You have littles.
Yeah.
Well, you just had one the other day, didn't you? I mean, it wasn't.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. The 2 teenagers. Well, Riff was a little too excited about a female, so he was resource guarding her, and no one else could touch her. And he's, she was about his size, and he was just sitting there looking at Mick, my mini Aussie, and he's like, I'm talking to her, and Riff was targeting him and so forth. And right when I started walking over there, he launched at him and he's like, no. And I'm like, 5-pound little devil. And I'm like, we are done. You're done. Get in the house. You get nothing. So I pulled him up, but I was like, lost your little mind. Like, he's a lot heavier than you and can crush you. Thankfully, he's a very sweet boy. But anyway.
But I think adolescence is a time when a lot of fights erupt.
Yep.
Right? Between children and dogs, they suck in that age bracket. So it's volatile times, right? They're feeling larger than life. They're testing the rules. They're testing everybody. Like, I grew up with 2 brothers when I was younger and they sucked, right? Like, I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. What are you going to do? I'm not hitting you. I'm not hitting you. Stop hitting yourself. It's just like that constant, like,
annoyance.
Get away from me, right? I know you had a bunch of brothers, so you probably had the same.
Yep.
So,
yep.
Sure. And that comes back to temperament, right? Like, what are you going to do? Well, I'm pretty mellow and mild. And so, you just kind of like, get away from me, right? Somebody else might take swings. Somebody else might, run off crying. There's all different options to choose. And I think that's when you have 2 adolescents, usually nobody walks away.
Yeah.
It's like the 2 guys in the bar fight. What are you looking at? What are you looking at?
Right.
You want some of this? Yeah, you want some of this?
And I usually find that when they're in that way, they're not super confident with other dogs when that happens, right? That's the hard part. Is like, I think, some people talk about dominance. I don't think it's dominance. I think there are certain behaviors that are dominant, but not the way we think it is in dogs, right? Mm-hmm. But anyway, I think that because they're not super confident and they're trying to sort their world, they're more prone to it, right? And just being stupid, making poor decisions. And everybody's different. Like, all dogs, just like people, have their own threshold for tolerance. So,
I don't know if anybody else on here is like a big National Geographic fan. I spent most of my childhood, I still love it. I still love watching all the nature documentaries. And, I like to think about, it's usually the grazer animals, right? Your sheep, your antelope, your stuff like that, right? And you have the big male who has his herd, and he's an adult, and then you have the 2 little brothers that come strolling on in that you could tell are kind of juveniles and trying to see what they can do, and they got their back up, and you watch it, and really when you see that those are younger animals, they'll give it a go, but usually once they get smacked around once or twice, they walk away. They're like, this isn't for me. I'll try again next year.
Right.
where when you really start to watch some of those programs in any species, when they're big adult males and they are out for breeding rights and they mean it, they're some of them are to the death.
Yep.
And so,
Yeah. And it is a consideration, right? Which is not they're competing for a resource, right?
mm-hmm.
But yeah, they're serious. They are. Whereas the adolescents are like, boo, and then they stand back and kind of see if are you going to do something? Did you care? Whereas the males are like, nope, it's on.
Yeah.
How far do you want to go? And they'll do all their blustering and stuff like that. And then I would go ahead and they would move away, right? Or fight if somebody gets hurt, because that's a big, huge thing, right? That's a terrible injury to have an injury in the wild, because it's not like they can run to the doctor, right? So it can affect their mortality. So anyway.
Yep. Most of them don't want to fight to the death because exactly that, right? It's not about dying, it's about breeding. So, yeah, Mary, what 3 behaviors do you think are the most important to seek pro help? Exactly the 3 we're talking about tonight, I think. Resource guarding, dog fighting, and bites.
And that's usually what I get called in for, like, right? And even then I assess, like, I ask tons of questions about the the dog fighting and the dog fighting. Like, I hate to say it, it's not that it's not serious but what can happen, the outcome of that occurring is not as terrible ish as a person getting injured. You know what I mean? There's financial cost to it and stuff like that. But whereas with dogs, yeah, you can sue the other person, but let's say their property. Whereas the person that gets bit can actually sue you for a lot, right? And if you haven't seen Michael Shikasha, I think it was something like 80 some odd thousand dollars to settle. So, but yeah. No, to me, those were probably the biggest ones.
Yeah, I think we said Illinois was one of the top settlement dollar values in the country. So don't get bit in Illinois, or don't let your dog bite someone in Illinois.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, so I will tell you the most serious dog fights, and I've seen one in my lifetime, and it was the most god awful thing I ever saw, which it was silent except for the dog that was screaming that was getting attacked. There was no barking at all. And it happened to my dog with a foster dog. Some of you guys may have heard me tell this story, but I was 3 steps away. And in the 3 steps it took me to grab that dog and throw her in the house, my old lady had 12 puncture wounds down her neck and got ripped from her hip to her hock, 33 staples. That was in 3 steps that it took me to walk. I was right there. So when a dog has intent, they mean it. And that's where people were saying, oh, he almost bit me. And I'm like, nope. It could have been so much worse. Nope. If it was going to be worse, the dog knows what they're doing. They know how hard they bite. Right. So speaking of bites, I think sometimes we get into people who, if the dog has really great bite inhibition, you don't do anything about it, right? Like they nip you, they bite you. You just go, oh, it's, it's just what he does. No, I don't care if they're not doing serious damage or even breaking skin, right? If you have multiple bites on the same dog, that's something that you need to ask for help on. I think one of the only other things that I would throw in there, Mary, along with some of these, is like some pretty severe fear, right? Fear-based aggression. So, a dog that's lunging at people because it's afraid, or a dog that's lunging out at other dogs or nipping, or those types of things because it's afraid. So I don't know if you, Lisa,
yeah. No, that's about, I just think about the stuff I get called in for.
Yeah, me too, right?
Besides, well, that's an OCD type of behavior, or, well, it depends, right? You'd have to, car chasing, you have to really suss that one out. But yeah, is it serious? Yeah, the dog can die. They chase the wrong, right? So, car chasing would be something to look at if you're having that issue. I would definitely seek help for that.
Yeah, and I think too what we were doing today really was things that are kind of normal occurrence but not normal, right? So we really wanted to do was like put it out there, like if these things are occurring, this shouldn't be something you just sit on and call it, well, that's just who my dog is, right? Car chasing, like Lisa said, yeah, that's one I would call in immediately, unless you've dealt with it before and you know how to fix it. I wouldn't wait on that because your dog's life's at stake.
Yeah.
So I just got a call on that too. And the dog apparently ran down, chased the car. The lady driving the car thought she had killed the dog because she hit the dog. The dog came running back up, like skin hanging off of it. Got fixed up, still chases cars. Yeah. So like, oof, yikes. I mean, that's life or death now we're talking, yep. Right? So, yep. And they did call right after the very first time. They're like, okay, still chasing cars. We need help. So,
yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough one. And it depends on, again, thinking about who the dog is. Well, once we get there, you can fully suss out who the dog is to determine what to do, how to do, or if it's a management situation, right? Mm-hmm. So, but anyway.
Yep. I think sometimes randomly we get calls on predatory behavior, right? Chasing the cat, killing the neighbor's chickens, that sort of thing. Some of that stuff, yeah, is depending on the dog's level of predatory instinct. Sometimes it's a management situation because it's like you can't get rid of the dog's necessity to want to murder the bunny, but it's what makes Fast Cat so popular.
Right. Find an alternate acceptable behavior.
Right.
Similar, right?
Right.
Fast Cat. But yeah, I think I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking the most severe cases where it's really like, is this possible? Or do we need to, what do we have to consider? And I think those are the people, the dog fighting. You know, you can manage a house of dog or a couple of dogs or whatever that don't like each other. You do it. It's not uncommon. People do it. Mm. But you know, to me, I just think about the people that go out to get dogs. Make sure that that's what you're looking for when you select a dog. If that's important to you, you have to select for. So,
yeah, and you know, I do it every day, and it's this is the thing that I find when I try to help people too. They don't like each other. They're never going to like each other. I've tried. They're never ever going to like each other. So it's not negotiable. You're not together ever.
Right.
Ever.
But the other thing to say, if it was truly a humongous issue, you wouldn't be able to separate them with just gates. Right.
Right. But my dogs have also never fought. I had one incident one time where somebody nipped somebody in the foot. And that was my defining moment. Like, this is not getting better. I see it getting worse. And that was my moment of, you're not together anymore. And it happened when Bam got to be about 17, 18 months. And I'll actually give you the progression of it. They started playing a little rougher. And then it got to be where like no one would walk away. So they would just kind of chest bump. And I would realize I would have to step in like, boys, knock that off, right? Like we need a little break. And they would go do their own thing. But it seemed to become inappropriate play, right? It was more pushing and shoving than it was reciprocal.
More intense. So the intensity kind of increased.
So I saw that start happening. And then Noah was on one side of me and Bam was on the other. And I don't know what happened because I wasn't really watching. I was on the computer and I just felt Noah go under the desk and then like it erupted. And I kind of like was, because I was in the middle of them, you know, I grabbed Bam and kind of put him, and I did have a gate to my kitchen just cause. So I put him behind that gate and I'm inspecting dogs and Noah's fine and Bam's holding his paw up. And it was just a little nip to his foot. It wasn't even bad. But then I saw it change. Then Bam was like, I'm done with you. And Noah was like, I'm done with you too. So, right, the X-Pens went up. But that was the extent of their fight.
Yeah.
They've never been in a knockdown drag out. They've never had the like, bah, 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 they never had a chance to do that. And I feel like you've heard us say this a bunch of times. Management always fails you.
Yes.
Sometimes you're not going to shut a gate, or something will pop open, or, the X pen falls over, whatever. And it's happened a couple of times now. And because they're never together and they've never been in a knockdown drag out, they're always like, what are you doing? Brr, what are you doing? Brr. And anyone who's had fighting dogs know they don't think about it when they get together. No. If they have been fighting, as soon as they're in the same room, they go together.
Yep. Yeah, so, it's like magnets. I've seen it and heard about it. I'm like, yeah, that's crazy scary when that happens. But yeah, for sure. No. Dog fights, not my favorite.
No.
And they're scary. Like, I've heard some stories and I'm like, oh my gosh, I mean, mine were bad, but they weren't terrible. It only became tricky when two got into a fight and the rest wanted to jump in.
Yeah.
That's when I'm like, that was scary, because I'm like, no, going around yelling, no, you don't do that. You stop. You come with me, and fortunately I carried some weight and they didn't try to go, but yeah, that's the other scary part of having multiples.
Well, and you have littles too, which it doesn't take much for them to get seriously injured. So
yeah, that's why I carefully orchestrate all of that. So
yeah,
but Christine threw something in here. My new rescue dog is growling at my other dog mostly at night. We don't know why. So mostly at night, there's so many questions, right? It's just super open. How old are your dogs? Does someone have health issues? Your rescue or your dog? Why is it mostly at night? Is somebody sore?
Are they in bed? Are they on the couch? Are they snuggled up next to you? Like, there's a lot of different things. You could have a resource guarding you. You could have a dog that doesn't see so well. You could have a tight space.
No health issues. I don't like that.
Well, no health issues that was checked by a vet, or like, because here's the thing. When I hear mostly at night, I go to a couple of things. Usually people sit down and watch TV at night, or, they get couch time where the dogs are sharing space. So if that's the case, I would be looking at, is it you? Are you petting one, not the other? Does one get upset that way? So it could be a little bit of resource guarding a human. Is it new rescue starting to sleep by the door, like guarding? What door?
Is the other dog? Yeah, is it by the bedroom door? Is the dog not letting the other dog pass him? I mean, again, it's a lot, and you probably need to reach out to somebody too, and for more direct information so that they can give you a better idea. So definitely reach out to someone to help you with that.
Right. Or I don't know where you're located, Christine, but sleeping at the entry door. I don't know how brave you are, but if you're interested, we could always do a live case study.
Yep.
So if you would be willing to do that, we could have you on a Facebook Live, and you guys could all be able to watch what we do and what kind of questions we ask and try and solve a problem. Granted, we'd be virtual, but that puts you out in a spot, right? So you got to kind of be brave for people to watch that. But I know any one of the three of us would help you privately, but I'm not sure where you're located. So,
but what I also say too is get video of what you're seeing, how they interact, not just when that's the trigger, but I always want to see how they interact when there's no pressures, right? Mm-hmm. No competition, no anything like that. How do they move about the house? Do they are they like a newly, a couple who is not getting along and they avoid each other and go in different spaces and don't look and stuff like that? What's going on? Because there's so much to it. But get video. Get video of them interacting, and then also some video about the sleeping at the door, because there's some body language that we'd be looking for on that too.
Yep, exactly.
So, and she said, sure, perfect.
Cool. So I would say You can email one of any of the three of us if you look at or message us on our Facebook pages, and we can set that up if that's something you're interested in.
Sure.
Lauren says, my sister has a 4-year-old Aussie who's fearful of children. It's a COVID puppy. For the first time lunged at a child. I have discussed with her to talk to a trainer who has experience with behavior. Even if you keep the dog away from unknown children, I have told her to get help. So here's my other thing, right? Yes, COVID puppy, but if the dog's 4 years old, it's had ample time, right, to sort of get things. So maybe it didn't get proper socialization, but I'm going to tell you there's probably something else with that. Probably where it came from, as well as, not getting out and about. But yes, that's absolutely so you have a fearful of a child. Now it's escalated to now I'm not just cowering and telling you I'm afraid. Now I've lunged at a kid. We have a progression of behavior. So you are 100% correct. I would have absolutely told her to reach out. Even if you keep the dog away from unknown kids, because kids are kids and they will walk up behind you and pet the dog on the butt, on the tail, and you don't even know they're there. So yeah, and I will tell you there are ways, right? Some dogs can only come so far, but that's why I love Roscoe's story, because, I got him and he still does not like children, and he never will, because the 3 boys in the home just tormented him. And I've made my peace with that. We can be around children and he can ignore them, but he was afraid of all people. He growled at people when I first got him, and through basically Suzanne's treat retreat program, he now will walk up, and he's a little rude, actually. He pokes people and says, do you know the game where I sit and you give me cookies? And I'll take rude and poking you for cookies versus growling at people all day long. So there is hope. And it depends on the dog. You can make bits of it better if it's ever going to be totally okay. You can't fix a really true fearful dog, but you can show them another way of how to be comfortable and make choices. So yeah, absolutely. And again, if your sister doesn't have someone in her area, feel free to have her reach out to one of us and we'd be happy to help. So Fort Lauderdale, take the dog everywhere. So it really concerns me.
Yeah, that is concerning.
Yep. So, if you want to, I might actually potentially have her watch last week's the snippet where Michael Shikashio kind of talks about dog bites, and $80,000 claim on a dog bite is that's a hard hit to anybody. So, and it's all that takes is a little nip, and sometimes somebody can sue you. So, not to be fear mongering, but that's real. So,
yep, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening to us tonight. I hope that if you have any friends or anything, now you can give them a little bit more information on when to seek help too, or if you're dealing with anything yourselves, feel free to reach out to us. So, I don't believe we're gonna have it next. I don't remember because it was Memorial Day. I'm not sure. So stay tuned. We'll see you in a week or two. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good night.